Beth from Cheapskate Cook, and welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm excited because we're going to talk about dry beans. When you're trying to save money and eat healthy, beans are really important, but they are not very popular, especially I found in America, because we love to make jokes about how beans make you gassy and all this, and honestly, I agree. For the longest time, I never learned how to make dry beans because I didn't like how they smelled when we cooked them, and I didn't like how people smelled after they ate them, so why bother? There had to be other ways to do it. But after learning more about beans and realizing how nutritious they can be if you can cook them and kind of get past that, then I decided to finally learn. So if you are intimidated about cooking dry beans, then this is what we're going to talk about. There are 3 ways that I like to degas beans. The first one is to soak them really, really well, for as long as you possibly can. Typically, the instructions that you're going to get on the bean bag, the bag of beans, it's going to say soak them for overnight. You can actually soak them longer than that. So you can soak them for up to 24 hours or even longer than that, and that's going to help kind of take some of the sulfurous stuff out of them. Just make sure that you change the water every 12 hours. So, for example, I have these beans, and let's say they're soaking in here, then I'm just gonna pour them into this colander, rinse them under the sink, and then I'm gonna pour them back into the big bowl, cover them with water, and let them sit for another 12 hours. So that's every, when you wake up in the morning and when you go to bed at night, and then you're ready to cook them the next day. Now, the other method is to be careful of what type of beans you use. Some beans tend to be worse than others. So, for example, I've learned that we typically need to avoid black beans and red beans, any beans with a really thick skin on them. But if you get the beans with the thinner skins, like Pinto or Great Northern or something like that, which are some of the cheaper beans, then you're fine eating those. The other method that you can use is spices to degas the beans. There are 2 particular spices that you can add to the cooking water when you're cooking beans, and it supposedly degasses the beans. I have tried at least one of those spices, and I honestly couldn't tell, but a lot of people swear by them. Every person is different. I linked to the post that talks about these spices in the description. Now I'm going to talk about 3 easy ways to cook the beans. Really, you don't need any fancy equipment. I'm going to show you how to cook them in an Instant Pot just because a lot of people have that, and that's the easiest way that I've found to cook beans, but don't let that stop you from trying it if you don't have an Instant Pot. The first method I'm going to show you is cooking them on a stovetop. Okay, just with a regular pan like this. For all of these methods, you're going to want to go ahead and rinse the beans. So you've got the beans, you pour them into a colander, and then you stick them under the sink and rinse them. And then it's a good idea to go ahead and pick through them and see if there are any rocks and stuff. I don't know why we have rocks in our beans in 2018, but I just tell myself that that makes them more natural, right? Then you're going to decide whether you're going to soak them or you're going to go ahead and cook them. Everyone has a different opinion about this. You do whatever works for you. So if I'm making soup out of my beans, I'll typically cook it in bone broth and skip the soaking. If I am going to cook Great Northern beans or chickpeas, because I'm going to use them to make dessert things like dessert hummus or blondie bars or something like that, then obviously I'm not going to cook them in bone broth. I cook them in water. So let's say you decide you're going to soak them. You're going to take a bowl like this. You can also use this pot. And you pour the beans in there. And then you're going to cover them with water. Typically, you want to use twice as much water as you have beans because The beans are going to absorb a lot of the water and they're going to swell. So you have to make sure that you have a much bigger bowl than you have beans. And you just cover it. I really like these Pyrex bowls because they are handy for all kinds of things, but beans, they're also handy for that. And then you let it sit overnight, or however long you decide to soak them. And then the next morning, you're going to rinse them through the colander, okay? Obviously, I'm not going to do that now because I'm not over my sink, but you're just going to pour it through the colander. And then you just pour them into your pot, add water or bone broth, and you only want to cover them by like 2 inches. So you want a gap of about 2 inches between the beans and the water and the bone broth. If you did not soak them, go ahead and pour in like twice as much bone broth or water as you have beans, because again, they're going to swell and absorb. And then on the stovetop, all you need to do is boil it for about 15 minutes, and then you can cover it and simmer it. So you're gonna lower the heat down to low, or like medium low, for about 2 to 3 hours. And by then, the beans should be cooked all the way through. Depending on how old the beans are will change the cook time, but typically if you just bought the beans, a week or 2 ago, then you can cook them for 2 or 3 hours and they'll be cooked through. If you don't have 2 or 3 hours to just hang around and babysit the stove, not that you really need to babysit, it's just kind of sitting there simmering. But if you're not going to be home for that long, which a lot of us, that's the case, then you can use your slow cooker. And this is the method that I used for up until I got my Instant Pot like a year ago. So you're going to do basically the same thing that you did with the stovetop. You pour in your beans, and depending on if you soaked them or did not soak them yet, then you put in the appropriate amount of water or bone broth, and then you turn it on high for 3 or 4 hours, or low for 6 to 8 hours. And again, this could change depending on how old the beans are, but typically that's what's going to get the beans to cook all the way through. Now, when you are cooking on the slow cooker, my one tip is that beans don't smell very good when they're cooking. So if I am going to use the beans for something savory, then I go ahead and add some flavoring, because then it smells more like soup rather than sulfur is cooking in my kitchen. So I'll add an onion, a couple cloves of garlic, and you honestly don't even need to chop it up. Like, I will just cut this in half and put the whole thing in there, and then it cooks down, and you kind of have to fish out some onion pieces, but for me it's just easier to just cut it in half and toss it in. Same with the garlic. I just peel them, mash them, toss it in. And then the last method is the Instant Pot. Oh, this is so heavy. Instant Pot. Depending on the kind of Instant Pot that you have, you probably have a bean pre-setting, but I don't recommend using that because each bean is different, and I've had people tell me that they put it on the bean setting, but the beans always come out underdone. So I recommend looking in this book. In the back, it has lots of, it opens up automatically because I look there all the time. It has the meat settings, dried beans, legumes, lentils, and it'll just give you a little cheat sheet for if you have Great Northern beans. They typically take 30 minutes to cook. And you're going to do the exact same thing that you did for the stovetop and the slow cooker, okay? So you pour it into the Instant Pot, and you fill it with the appropriate amount of water, and then you're going to need to twist the seal to make sure that it actually seals while it's pressure cooking. I use the manual pressure cooking setting, and then I just set it on high pressure for whatever this book says for that particular kind of bean. And then you push start and you leave it. The reason why this is the easiest for me is because it is the fastest way to cook beans. Also, it is the best results that I have found cooking unsoaked beans. Typically, if you use a stovetop, you're going to have to cook your beans longer than if you didn't soak them. And the slow cooker is going to take them longer if you did not soak them. But the Instant Pot, it takes longer, but it's only like 2 or 3 minutes versus 30 minutes or an hour. So if you are ready to try your own bean recipe, then I have 2 bean recipes that are good introductory ones in the description of this video. They are our cumin beans, which we use for burrito bowls, we use for tacos, we use for nachos. Typically I'll make them one day and then we'll just eat like a bowl of beans and cornbread and some kind of veggie on the side. And then the next day I'll use it in chili, or we'll make nachos or tacos, and it just kind of goes with us throughout the week. And that's really nice because it's a very simple recipe and it's very inexpensive. So if you're still a little nervous about cooking with dry beans, I highly recommend trying that one because it's so versatile and it literally takes, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes to put in the Instant Pot and then be done. I can't remember if I put slow cooker instructions on there and stovetop instructions, but if I didn't, after this video, I will go ahead and add those so that they'll be there the next time you check for that recipe. And then the second recipe is white bean chili, which I just put on the blog this week. It's one of our favorite recipes because we don't actually like regular chili very much. I don't know if it's the tomatoes and the heavy meat, I don't know, we just don't love it. Both of these recipes are gluten-free and they have vegan, vegetarian, and dairy-free options in the instructions. So I've already done all the work and done the testing and tried different things to show you how you can make this fit your needs or your wants at the time. Alright, that's all I have for tonight. I hope this demo helped you save money and eat healthy, and I'm so excited that you came.